Welcome to the Audiation in the Wild podcast with your hosts, Bo Talifer and Eric Rasmussen. Episode 6. Today we meet the authors of Audiate-Play Guitar through Audiation, Enrique Andino, Stephen Gunter, and Michael Vike.
Yeah,
Yep.
Thanks so much for joining us today. I just want to say we're breaking an attendance record for our podcast. So I think 5 people is the most we've ever had at one time. So this is fun, especially for me. I'm a guitar teacher. So
Yeah.
So I just wanted to have you on the podcast. It might have been a week or two ago. Eric sent me a link for the new book that's going to be launching, the new series that you guys have put out, which I believe is called Audiate-Play Guitar through Audiation.
Yes.
And it's very exciting. I've been in this MLT world for a few years now, and I teach mainly guitar, and I would have loved to have found something like this, 3 or 4 years ago. So I'd really just love to dive in if you guys would like to. Just how did this project start? Like where did your guys' MLT journey begin, and how did we get here with this new book coming out?
Yeah, where are you all from? I want to know that too.
Okay,
in the mix.
Well, I'm from South Carolina. It was originally in Columbia when we got started. Now I'm up in the upstate near Greenville.
Got it. So you was at South Carolina when Dr. Gordon was there, or you studied?
Mainly went to Valerio, but Dr. Gordon did live there, and we were able to visit him for the first couple of years we were writing the book, and get in touch with him. Michael is from Germany.
Yeah, we actually met at a gimbal workshop in South Carolina. Some of that 2-week summer workshops about MLT. And I came over from Germany because I was also interested in Audiation and MLT. And that's where I met those guys.
And my name is Enrique Andino, and I'm originally from Puerto Rico, but I've been living in Texas for quite a long time. And I also met these guys at the workshop there, and just was doing my graduate degree at the time, and I was just fell in love with music learning theory. And I just wanted to know more about it, and having the chance to meet Dr. Gordon, and he was teaching some of the classes for the workshop, so that was that great experience at the time.
Yeah, I studied with him when I was getting my master's at Temple University. For about 2.5 years, I took everything he had to throw out, and that was life-changing for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and then maybe just for me to follow up, I've just been an avid reader of everything MLT for the past 3 or 4 years now, and for the past year I've been hanging out with Eric a lot, and it's been very, very fun diving into all this stuff. So MLT for guitar, I think it has some just very interesting obstacles in terms of applying this to the guitar compared to other instruments or to just a non-instrumental setting. I'd love to hear your guys' experience with how the curriculum of the book started developing, because it sounds like this has been in the works for a while now.
Yes. Like Michael was saying, we met at the workshop, a Gimbal Level 1 workshop, and we had never met before that moment, and now here we are 11 years later, friends. We have kids now. It's just been a long journey from the start to the finish. I taught middle school guitar at that time, and but I'm mainly a chorus teacher, mainly choir, and every place I've gone, as the choir grew, I almost went to just private lessons because I couldn't teach more than a certain number of classes during the day. So a lot of my education, my degree from the University of South Carolina was in choral. I took classical guitar while I was there, really just for fun, because I'd played most of my life. And then Michael and Enrique both bring unique perspectives as well, so I'll let them tell about their sides of the story.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe Michael, what is your background with guitar?
I actually started playing when I was 10,
Okay.
classical guitar. And when I was like 18, I thought it would be cool to do something with music in life. So I looked to go to university when I finished my school. And so I studied classical guitar. And when I started teaching during my studies, yeah, I was looking for ways to not only learn music reading, but also learn to improvise, learn to remember music better, and just to improve it. And that was my start of the journey to get to know MIT, because some years, I think 2 years later, after starting to teach, one of my professors told me, "Hey, well, why don't you check out this Gordon stuff? This is much more contemporary than." I was reading a book from a piano teacher, Margit Barrault. Um, I don't know the English title, but she was also having a similar approach. It was from the 1920s, and he was saying, "Check out this contemporary stuff. It's probably much better." And then I started reading all of Dr. Gordon's books, and was absolutely on fire with that. Yeah, but applying it to the guitar teaching was very hard for me. So I visited a lot of workshops, and finally those in South Carolina. And working with Enrique and Stephen on the book for several years made it much easier to really apply it and to get the hang on it, how it works, what doesn't work, and what is important.
Yeah.
I have to agree with that. Just having had the chance to write this book and test it out with our students, and it's just gives you a totally different perspective from when we started. And I did private lessons when I started back in 2010, and I think I had like a studio of 30 students at the time, mostly kindergarten through grades 8, you know, elementary school kids and teenagers. And there was not a lot that I could find at the time, and still nowadays there's several books for children. Some are more song based than others. Uh, most are uh, really most focus more on music notation, right?
Yeah.
And some are more chord based, more song based, but there was really nothing that I was satisfied with at the time. And I was using the string book, actually, the jump writing string series when I first started. And I was teaching at a private music school. I remember they were like they didn't understand at all what I was trying to do. They thought I was gonna
I've
have no
been in that
students
position.
the next week.
You're the only MLT teacher at school.
Yeah. So eventually they saw the potential, and they completely changed their mind. But I stopped using the string book. I didn't do it for too long because it was very difficult to adapt. But as we were writing this book, my teaching got better. And we shared a lot of ideas throughout all these years. And I just wish
That's
that
actually
had
something
been
I
out
was
there
very
sooner.
excited
But
about. I was very excited to see there's 3 of you, because I'm thinking, well, they all have students, and they're all probably sharing these ideas back and forth. So this is really getting, field tested in a way that it may not if it was just one person writing the book.
Yes, when we started it that summer, we all looked at each other. We were young back then, so we all looked at each other, and we knew Marilyn Lowe had just written this piano book, MLT piano book. We said, "Hey, let's write a book too." Apparently, Gordon was telling us 2 other solo authors had tried and just gotten bogged down, and so we all looked at each other. Yeah, it'll only take 3 years, and and we have all this other stuff to model it off of. We just have to adapt it over.
Because I think on the website it says it's been in progress for 10. Is that
we actually figured out it's 11 and a half, to be fair. And I tell you, we were just talking about it. Year 8 or so, we kind of got so bogged down, we almost just stopped. And we had done so much work, and we started it. We just kind of lifted it back into being, because since that, for 11 and a half years, we've pretty much met on Sunday afternoon at about this time on Skype. I don't think Google Meet and Zoom weren't even a thing when we started meeting. So, and we've been hashing this out little by little. We took all of the methods that had already been done. GIA sent us all the instrumental books. Marilyn Lowe's book as references to kickstart us. That really helped, having that connection to Gordon and that access to him in Colombia, because I think Enrique is in Texas, Michael being in Germany, and I was in Colombia. So still having that constant access to him really opened the doors to the communication with GIA, because Gordon could look at him and go, hey, these guys are really serious. Here's the work they brought in, and it really paved the way for us as young authors at the time to get started.
Yeah, that I'm very lucky to have the chance to talk to him when he was still with us. I never got the chance to meet him, unfortunately, which I would have very much liked to. So on the GIA website, I'm able to get a little preview of some of the content in the books, and Enrique was alluding to this a bit, but it seems at least in the student book 1 and 2, what's available for preview right now, the method is primarily a chord-based method for students are playing chords that they're going to accompany themselves while they sing the songs. Is that the thrust of the curriculum?
Let Michael talk about this one, because he's the
Gordon recommended us. We want to write a method that is not based on you have to do early childhood and all the other stuff in MLT and then you start with guitar. But we also wanted to provide the method to people that have no previous MLT experience. I mean, the children that start. So we had to write it for people that cannot audiate and probably don't have a good listening vocabulary. So we would have to put that all into our book. And Gordon recommended us to start with melody playing once the students were introduced to solfege. So we designed the first book to be mostly like listening experience with a lot of singing. That's why they learn chords on the guitar, so they can sing for themselves and with each other, so they can build their vocabularies. And parallel, they learn the patterns according to what Gordon presented in his register books. So they also progress in the field of audiation. And once they have this knowledge and this skill to use the solfege, they start to play melodies, which then starts in the second book.
Okay.
So in the second book, it's always 1 unit melody, 1 unit chords, and 1 melody chord. So it's really a lot of I can't find the word.
The English word.
Welcome
to our meetings.
A lot of balance, a lot of back and forth.
Yeah, it's variety and balance.
Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And then I was just going to add on the. Oh, go ahead.
No. See.
All right. No, I was going to add on that. Besides what Michael said, that we also start with bass lines right from the beginning.
I did see that actually, and I'm sure Eric's brain is exploding with support on that front. He's moved to calling them root melodies just because they're so important.
Yeah. So from day one, they're singing and playing those bass lines on the guitar, and it just it's very natural on the guitar to do the bass lines. It's just so natural, especially if you've done classical guitar, played bass guitar before. It's just supernatural. So split progresses, the open strings, the bass fretted bass lines, and it gets a little bit more difficult progressively. So yeah, but melodies, like Michael said, is book two. Once the students have better grasp of solfege and they build a better vocabulary.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Talking about bass lines, really early on in the book, we had to develop some sequencing that was not really anywhere yet. One of those was like harmony sequencing, because it just wasn't out there at the time. This would have been, I don't know, what year did we start, guys? Was it 2010? We start writing the book? Yeah, so about 2012 or so. We're in the midst of this process, trying to figure out, how to progress through the book, and everything doesn't have to be that sequence, but we wanted to lay it out in a meaningful way. Us all being teachers, we're going, what does the student need absolutely next to progress? How can we provide this in the book for people that do and don't know MLT? How do we write it in? And one of the things we happened upon were, the ostinatos, but the harmonic and the rhythmic ostinatos, the bass lines incorporate in guitar in particular, because then we had to turn around and apply it to the instrument. And it really clarified a lot for us. I kind of consider this, for us writing the guitar book, kind of like our doctoral degree in MLT. As we've gone through the years, we'd sit down and go, well, what does partial synthesis really mean? Oh, well, what is this step really? And let's go back and fill it in. And it really came out in a really nice way in each unit.
Yeah. And I think there's a balance here, because there's a whole MLT side to the teaching equation and the curriculum, and then there's the applying this to the guitar, and especially with the taking into account the age range of the students that might be playing this method. Because I see what you guys have done is you've added these the early chords, at least, are 3-string chords, which I'm a huge fan of. I think it's genius. If anyone's trying to teach guitar to a kindergarten kid and you're not doing these small chord shapes, I don't know how you're getting it done, to be quite honest. So as soon as I saw this in the method, I was like, I'm very happy with the way this is going, because it's just their finger dexterity is often nowhere near in the realm to make it possible to play, full-blown 5 and 6-string chords. And so you have to start sequencing this based off of these little chord shapes. And I think I'm looking at the table of contents for the first book. I see the E minor chord in unit 2. And I'm assuming that's the I can't see the rest of the book, but I'm assuming that's the 3 open strings. And then you have your very small C chord with that little G7 chord, and these are all playable with one finger. So the progression there, I start to see, I'm getting excited, because I'm like, these are things that I've caught on to too, but I very rarely get to talk to other guitar teachers who think about that, let alone that plus an MLT perspective. So it's really cool to see the way, at least in the table of contents, that seems to be progressing.
Yes, that's a great observation. Appreciate that. And when we sat down at first to write the book, we had to try to choose an age range. Like, okay, so we're writing this book for, just have an idea we're aiming for, right? So we said, okay, let's think about a second grader, more or less. That's what was our original idea. But I had kindergarten students at the time that I was testing these things out with. I know Stephen was doing middle school. Michael has some younger students as well. So I'm from kindergarten through grade 5. I think this is a great book. I don't know if many guitar teachers have taught kindergartners or first graders, but it is a lot of stuff out there is just too much for them, right? They need to break it down for them.
I completely agree.
Yeah, so we try to start with the simplest, most basic things that if you have a kindergarten, if you have a first grader, what can they do? How do you progress from there? But Stephen also tested it out with his middle school students, so it can be adapted to older students as well.
And that's what I was thinking, because if some of that earlier content is easier for them physically to play, it's not like it's not worth having in there. They can go through it faster, or you could add more to it
Mm-hmm.
if need be. And I like the idea of having it starting simple, because it's just such a good foundation for everyone.
Like Enrique was saying. Oh, go ahead, Michael.
What you actually cannot see from the previous, if I remember correctly, we have also concluded full chords in the books. So if you teach older students that have normally faster motoric learning, you can replace some of the 3-string chords with full chords. So it's not too easy for them, because usually they lose interest when it's too easy. So you have to balance it depending on the age of the student. But due to the material we provide in the book, it's possible to pretty much adapt it good for a lot of age groups.
Yeah, all the full chords are in the back of the book. So if you have older students, they will refer to that. But they're also included there. Well,
and you were saying I got a chance to test it with my middle school students, so 6th to 8th grade, because not every middle school is the same grade range, but I did that. I took the stuff we were doing in the book, and I would go into the guitar class, 6th through 8th, and I think it's important to note that like anything with MLT, even though it is sequential, it's not the end all. Like, you don't just do what's in this book. It is the skill portion of what you do, and all of the enrichment things that you would normally do as a good guitar teacher or a good teacher in general, you still do with students, but now foundationally they're getting every element they need along the way. So the middle school students, I would still take them through. I teach high school now, and if I was teaching high school guitar, I would have them go through the book. I would just have them for their oral training, which is so important because it's already there. I would just use different songs that had the same chords, or use this as like a little warm up song, and then go over to other enrichment songs, and then they would play the full chords if they were ready. Dexterity wise, I had 8th graders that could just riff on, Metallica, and they played classical and electric, and then I had like beginner 8th grade students that were just fine with that single finger C string, C chord, They were feeling pretty good about that C to E melody. And so you have a wide range of things you could use, out from the base that we tried to provide in the book.
Stephen, I think that's a really good point. For anyone using any kind of method book, it's not like you should only be doing things from the method book. And I think that's often what happens with instrumental lessons that are very decoding heavy for students, get turned off by that. And one of the things that's helped me in my own studio a lot is just I have a set of songs that have these basic core foundational chords or progressions or any kind of skills that I want to be teaching. Like I think a lot of teachers do, but I'll just take requests and just start teaching everything students want to learn outside of that, because it's just everything else is just more listening exposure. And if it's songs students are requesting, I know they're going to be doing it on their own time and listening to it and practicing it more. But yeah, I really like that comment about it's not the be all end all. Any single method book, you can add a lot of things on top of it. Especially with the guitar. The guitar is a ludicrous instrument, I think, to study, just in terms of the amount of directions it could go. You're even saying, the folk playing or the classical playing or the rock playing, they all have very different curriculum setups. If someone just came on your doorstep and said, I want to be a rock guitarist, your curriculum design for them would probably be very different than if someone said, I want to be a very serious classical guitarist or jazz guitarist. And so it's hard when you're a guitar teacher, because you want to set someone up to go in all these directions if they wanted to. But it's a tall order to do that.
I'm glad you were talking about that, because that's what took 11 and a half years to write. That we talked about that a lot, actually, all having different backgrounds. And I played mainly pick style before doing fingerstyle classical in college. So in the book, we actually have both presented in every unit. We have like a pick style and a fingerstyle playing variations or choices. Even though it's not like, play rock music, play this. We focused it down to just those two kind of strumming right hand techniques throughout the book.
Yeah, which I mean, even on that front of the technical front, it makes a lot of sense because you really have no idea where someone's going to go. Someone might be showing up for guitar lessons and they really just want to sing some songs or play some chords. But someone else, when they show up for guitar lessons, like they really want to play, solos, and they're not interested in playing chords almost at all. Or that could happen. And so setting people up, I think from beginning playing with a pick and with their fingers, it's a great idea because I've seen beginners get locked into one over the other, and it's hard for a lot of people to start doing the other one once they get too used to one. And I grew up doing classical guitar and then playing everything else, rock and all that. So I think the variety is great for people.
I'm curious, what if in terms of listening to all the different styles that born out of guitar, the blues, the jazz, classical, you've got Eastern European, you've got Middle East. There's like so much. Do you have listening or favorite artists or a playlist of what you would encourage your students to listen to that has a great variety? And what would you put in that playlist?
I know Eric has a playlist. It's considering he's not a guitarist, his playlist of guitars to listen to is pretty on point and well rounded.
I had that on the website, Eric.
I had a student that her mom said, this is what he's doing. This one of I had a 13-year-old student, 12, 13. Anyway, his mom and I were talking. She's a friend of mine, and she was saying this is what he does all week. He's like learning tunes, off the radio or off of YouTube and like that. And I said, what else is he listening to? So I went through and I made a list of a playlist of all the things I thought any good guitarist should know. I don't think it had Al Di Meola in it, but it had some pretty crazy, uh, you know, uh, people that I enjoyed listening to at some point. And it was pretty jazz heavy, but I also had blues and Anna Vidovic and some other tremendous.
Yeah, I was going to say you have her on there.
Yeah, I'm in love with her.
I don't know about you guys, but I've always found that I like doing that with students one-on-one, guiding them to make their own playlists. And if I see it only has one of, if I see it, there's only something from one artist on it, I'll encourage that more, but also try to add other stuff that I think they would enjoy as well. I don't know how you guys have approached that, but I feel like it's fun to do one-on-one and kind of tailor it to people.
I think it's a great idea. I don't know if Michael does that with the students.
He has something sort of. I have a list of all songs I ever taught, pretty much, and it's something that's in the teaching room, and students can look through it. So if they new songs and they want to play and see what other people play, and so there's so much variety in guitar music when you. I mean, at least you want to. If you want to go for Phrygian and Aeolian, it's easy to find that in heavy metal, and those subgenres. Or you have so many variety throughout all the styles, and so the students can just check what songs they know, what they like, and see, oh, this song, 20 students played this song. This must be good. How does that sound? So they can just interact with each other, and they can get curious about new music that they might not ever come across before.
think it changes a lot depending if you're teaching in a classroom or if you're teaching one-on-one as well. I teach mainly one-on-one, so I love just you know in the lesson. Okay, right now, what do you want to learn? Just show me on iTunes. I'll just figure it out by ear and dive into it. Rarely that causes problems unless they're requesting obnoxious jazz tunes, which is I have one student that does. but I think in a classroom you have to be a little more, or maybe a lot more prepared, just because it could get out of hand faster if you have 10 or 15 kids. But I'm usually not in that situation personally.
You cannot do it in the lesson, but you can collect wishes and what the students would want to like, and then you can check after
Exactly.
the lessons and prepare material for upcoming lessons.
Yeah, I do something similar to that. I teach modern band now, which I think the term was coined by David Wish from Little Kids Rock. I'm not sure, but
Sorry, could you say that again, Enrique? Was it from Little Kids Rock?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
teach middle school modern band mostly. What I do now.
Yeah.
6th, 7th, and 8th grade. I have 3 levels: level 1, level 2, level 3. So it's really student centered. I just try to teach songs that are meaningful to them, or that they're listening to, or that they would enjoy playing. But I love the idea of having a playlist to offer them more variety out of their comfort zone, right? But I do teach drums, bass, keyboard, and guitar right now. So that'd be a huge playlist if I were to do one for all the instruments, right? But
yeah, I just sent my playlist. Please send me some suggestions. What you would
actually
put in there.
One of our
thank you.
One of our interviewees, Rand Blake, his episode hasn't been released on our podcast yet, but it'll be out in the next month or so. But he has a great book, Primacy of the Ear, and there's actually an explicit recommendation in there to make a playlist and listen to it, a couple times a day, and keep this playlist going for a month. And you're not necessarily listening to, 2 hours of music a day. But I have noticed from getting students to do this, where we make a playlist of songs that they want to learn, and they're listening to them a couple times a day. That repeated listening seems to really, those any tonal patterns or rhythm patterns that are in those songs that they are kind of in the proximity of being ready to absorb, they just get implanted after some repeated listening.
It's so much easier to teach songs they already got in their ears and brains and bodies, and once it's embodied, then they can learn it that fast. It's sometimes it's scary.
It is, yeah. Or to even do little things like I see in the table of contents there's minor and throaty, right? But just changing the tonality of a song or changing the meter of a song, that really hits home if the student knows the song. We were, I don't know, I was playing some Taylor Swift song the other week in minor, and the student it was like the weirdest thing to listen to. It was cool.
That's a good thing to do to train their ears. One of the things we really paid a lot of attention to were the recordings for each unit that come along or released with the CD. They don't do CDs anymore. Now they just do the link to it online. But every unit has kind of substantial amount of recordings that go along with it, of us playing. And I think we did a pretty good job of getting a lot of these folk tunes to be in different styles. It's pretty important to us because we were talking about stylistic differences. So we have some rock folk tunes and some jazz folk tunes. It's really fun to listen to. And they're folk tunes, but you run into copyright issues, to be quite honest, when you put stuff into a book. And so really what a lot of people probably, if they don't understand, hopefully they would understand, is this is like the gateway. These the songs and the recordings are the gateway to all the things that y'all were talking about in terms of the playlist and things like that. Every unit has patterns that the students are supposed to sing and listen to that go along with it. So they get those patterns and then they go listen to the music, and then it's reinforced. It's exactly what you were saying. Most of my students, we would do a unit with this, and then quickly we'd be on to 10 other songs that they knew that all contain the same content.
Yeah.
And I encourage that. I think Enrique and Michael encourage it a lot. Just that variety and enrichment aspect to it.
Yeah.
And it was very important to us that it sounds like real music and not like a training and practice CD where the teacher says 1, 2, 3, 4, bing, 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 something like that. So it really sounds like music when they listen to it.
Yeah, and I think this is one of the difficulties in teaching the guitar, especially melodies, because you guys were explaining that starting in book 2, there's this back and forth between accompaniment and melodies. Melodies being played on the instrument. They're singing melodies, obviously, the whole time while they're accompanying themselves. But on the guitar, there are things that are very easy to things that are easy to audiate are not always easy to play on the guitar. And sometimes it's the exact opposite. Some things that are very hard to audiate are extremely difficult to very hard to audiate are really easy to play. Like just strumming through all the 6 strings. I don't think most people could sing that, even if your vocal range. I think one of the lowest notes, I can sing that low E, so I could sing that, but it's not something that's necessarily easy to audiate, even though it's very easy to play. So there has to be this I don't know. What I'm trying to say is when I'm teaching melodies by rote on the guitar, you kind of have to factor this in, like what can they audiate, but what could they actually execute right now? Because if I want to take song requests and I want to teach them how to play melodies, but I also want to make sure they're going to be satisfied and enjoying it, because it's not a fun experience to not accomplish something. Not that you don't ever want to challenge, but I think students generally do better when they are continually succeeding, and the guitar can be very delicate with this because the complexity can just get out of hand so much. Even just changing strings while beginners are playing melodies on the guitar can cause a lot of problems. It just slows them down.
One of the important issues that you just brought up was what range they can sing in, and you have C equals do. Okay, well there's like 18 do's on the guitar then. So where do you start? Which was another sequencing thing we really had to sit down and work out, was where on the guitar do we want to start, what makes technical sense, and also singing sense. We want the students to be able to sing, and thinking of the age range. So we started down on the lower. We started down, with around the with C major, F, and playing. Michael can probably talk more clearly than I can about this, but with the melody playing, we really intentionally started with usually an open string T. Michael, you want to take it away?
Okay. We pretty much start on the first string with the E, F sharp, and G. So we have a simple song that goes da da da, dum bum 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 bum. So it's pretty easy to audiate, and you can also easily play it. And from that on, we go to C major. So we have the scale from the root note to the 5th. So we can play some songs, and then we expand the range of the notes further and further. So they get to know the first position more and more. And
I think just to comment on that, I think it's really interesting because in terms of starting there in combination with what Stephen was saying, the singing range, because this is where I arrived. When you're teaching young kids and you are going to get them to do melodies, getting them to do it in this open position but high up, they can sing what they're playing, and they play it much better on the guitar when they can sing in that range as well. And so it's just so fun to talk to other people about.
So you arrived at that same conclusion then?
Yeah, especially with the like playing something in E minor or E as La. It's playable on one string, which when they're very new to playing melodies, I'm a big fan of keeping things on one string if you can, because it cuts down the complexity. You know, it's hard to go back and forth between strings. Like Stephen, you were even saying if we were in the keyality of F and you had T as open E string, you know, do can be the F on the first fret.
Yeah.
And but if you didn't, if you said no, we're gonna be in the keyality of E. T is, you know, the D sharp on the other string, and it gets into a lot of stuff like that. Yeah. And I think one of the benefits of the guitar is that these movable shapes of scales is so perfect for movable solfege with the law bass minor, because they visually look the same. And you kind of get this on the piano a little bit. Like kids very quick, like Marilyn Lowe's method is fantastic for the piano. It's very, you know, kids seem to pick up on the fact, well, you know, C do looks kind of the same as G do, and then but on the guitar, like you can actually make it look exactly the same if you wanted to. You could make the C do and D do and E do movable shapes that really are intuitively obvious to link with the verbal associates, and that's something that I think is really cool for guitarists.
As for the second book, for book 1 and book 2, we have a possible enrichment section with the suggestions to expand the lesson, right? So for book 2, there's something that we always mention to transpose the melody they learn and let's say the first string, transpose it to the second string, so transpose it to the third string, all in first position at first, because those fingerings are the same, right? And so it's something that we encourage throughout book 2 for the teacher to encourage that transposing with the same fingerings. So it's something that we realized early on as well, and we try to include somehow in there. Well,
I've had some students. It's just very interesting the difference of doing it like this versus using a standard guitar method would start you naming all the notes in the first position with all the pitch names and the decoding. But if you get them on board with the movable solfege, they can be playing like songs that are up high on the neck, and they understand the scale shapes and the verbal associates. It's wild, and that happens like relatively soon compared to a normal classical repertoire or note reading repertoire. Wouldn't have them playing up on the neck like that for, I mean, I'm looking at like I have a Royal Conservatory. Yeah, forever. I'm looking at, you know, like a grade 5 Royal Conservatory book. It's just in front of me. And I mean, you're a pretty good guitar player by the time you play that. And they're still not, they're just like starting to like play notes like, you know, higher than fifth position.
There's a huge difference, especially since they're singing everything. You know, even if you take the solfege out of the equation, which solfege is a great tool and it helps out a lot, but they have the ability to sing the songs. They have it in their head, so you know most kids will be able to figure it out even higher positions. So it makes a huge difference. The fact that they're singing everything, they're trying to audiate everything. So, yeah, there's a lot of stark differences compared to the decoding that's presented in most guitar methods. Right?
And in my experience with the decoding, most of the methods that use decoding do it way too quickly. So like if we were going to try to defend decoding as a method, which I don't think any of us even want to, the decoding itself, it proceeds so fast that there's no way some of these kids in elementary school could handle it. Like I won't call out method books by name, but some of the very well-known ones, you know, there's a few notes introduced on each page, and it just starts the complexity. Like it's all mental, and it just compiles within 10 pages. Like there's an insane amount of information that you're expected to know, and none of it has to be sung. And I don't think it's a mystery why a lot of those guitar methods don't end up working for a lot of kids specifically.
Yeah, actually, I've seen teachers that that are pretty experts in teaching that kind of way, and they get pretty good results because they obviously do a lot of things right in that box, in that without audiation actually, but they do the teaching so that it really fits the student and also fits the method, so it works to some kind of a degree. And they get astonishing results sometimes. And but for me, it is important to empower the student so the student can understand by ear, can listen to music, can make music his or her own, and then play from the heart and be more creative with that. And that's why I prefer the audiation way to do it and not the decoding way. But I've seen teachers, and I was thinking, well, this cannot be possible, and so
yeah,
it's huge different, even without solfege and that stuff. So you cannot really
you never know what the students are exposed to outside of those sessions too. Like I grew up with a classical guitar teacher, as all decoding and all that, but I was doing a ton of improvising and singing and playing other instruments outside of doing all that, and I turned out very fine. The decoding wasn't holding me back or anything like that. But I could see if if the teacher didn't know how to pace it properly for you, or maybe if just luck of the draw, you never know how it's going to land on some students.
I think it's interesting we're bringing up the audiation part of it, which is why we named the book Audiation. Is in kind of our core philosophy on teaching. Me being a choir teacher primarily, have a different perspective on it. I taught 3 young ladies. They were like 3rd grade when we started. Now they're 19, 20, and private lessons when I was also teaching the group guitar. And one of the really cool side effects of watching them grow up is, and they're all unique and different kind of musicians, different families, different little kind of microcultures. They all learned to and developed a love for writing their own music. Creating the creativity aspect, the writing, you're not writing, but also making your music, writing it down. Sure, if you know how to, but the producing of music, all of that stuff doesn't happen as readily or as intentionally, unless you make it more intentional. And so, in our sequencing, it was important to us that we included movement when we're listening, movement in the lessons, creativity exercises, things that were all sequenced in so that students get that well-rounded exposure. If you catch a student that hasn't received that kind of stuff from nature, or nurture, then you get it there in the lesson. And so I mean, I think we've all seen amazing results from lots of methods. And but then, like you and like us when we were meeting way back then, and like Eric probably, and like everybody that's come upon MLT and started reading, we look down and go, I knew this. I knew I was missing this. I knew like this, and a lot of us were doing it already. A lot of us were filling in these little gaps. And then in the back of our mind going, I know that I've like kind of figured this out, because a lot of it's like clicking in. Like some of the things you said you've already doing with your students that are in our book, and you're like, it's nice to see it back in this book, because we figured it out as well, separate. But we wanted a way of codifying it, putting it in for everybody to be able to then go out and expound upon it and build on it even more. And we started at the younger age because, well, we didn't want to come out with the high school book or something and go, well, y'all fill in the early gaps, because anybody that's ever taught elementary school music, and all elementary school music teachers that are going to listen, that's the hardest job. It's the most important job. Is that early teaching.
Thank you. I teach babies to 7-year-olds mostly, and the variety I try to give them, and I just take them through as much stylistic, which I think is undervalued, variety, as opposed to just tonal and rhythmic context differences. The stylistic and cultural differences that young children get exposed to, it gives them a tremendous advantage when they're ready to go through to the point where they're ready for instrumental instruction. Because they come to you and they're still in babble, what is the meaning of what they're playing on it doesn't make sense. They're pushing notes like I did when I was starting piano lessons when I was 7. I played all the right fingers on the right keys. And somewhere along the line, I, of course, incorporated my musicianship, but I was so good with puzzles and other things that the notation and all that, it wasn't bothersome. But when I listened to my performances or imagined what I was sounding like back then, it certainly wasn't near as good if I had been taught to audiate. Not that I wasn't teaching myself somehow to audiate along the way, but it certainly doesn't go well with your leave it to your own devices if you don't have an extraordinarily high aptitude. And I think some of what Michael was saying about every method has great players. Well, they need to have high level of audiation, right? High level of music aptitude, say, and then they have to have that intrinsic motivation. Then it almost doesn't matter how you are taught, you overcome any bad teaching. But what's missing so much is that uh, how many children quit because it's too hard for them, or how many people quit because this is just ridiculous, it's too easy. I'm way ahead of this. I'm ahead of my music teacher. I don't want to learn from him. I'm going to go learn, on my own in my bedroom.
Or even it just not being centered on playing music, which it can very easily happen in a half an hour music lesson if you have so much stuff to cover, like the technique of playing the instrument, learn if you are trying to learn how to read music, like more of the decoding method. There's a lot of things that can occupy the time in the lesson that have nothing to do with singing songs or learning these kind of fundamental audiation skills, and you can see that happen in music lessons. And so, a lot of kids, for guitar specifically, this to bring it back to guitar, a lot of kids just that show up at my studio, they just want to learn how to play some songs. Like that's at the start of their whole journey. They're like, guitar school, I want to go learn how to play some songs, and they show up, and then it can get, guitar. I think it's less likely to get intense fast compared to the piano, because who knows, if you have a classical guitarist, you get pretty serious pretty fast if that's your teaching path. But a lot of kids that start with the guitar, like they just see someone strumming a guitar and singing some songs, and then they show up and they're like, I want to do that. And then the lessons may or may not have anything to do with that, depending on what's going on in the teaching. And
Yeah.
that's why I like the idea of starting it with. I really support the way you guys started the method with the strong curriculum on these folk songs, and obviously just these. There's obviously other songs that you teach that you can't have in the book for for rights reasons, which we all understand. But because at the end of the day, if you do turn out to be a very skilled classical guitarist or jazz player or whatever, most of those people can still strum some chords by the fire and hang out with their friends and sing some songs. And I think that skill set is kind of at the core of being a guitarist. I mean, I hang out with a lot of amazing jazz guitarists, and they're some of the best folk guitar players I've ever met too. Like they can just really keep songs together.
And we're so,
Yeah.
especially the university side of things in general, is so geared in towards music reading. And music, I believe music reading is very important.
Sure.
But it's not the end all, like fundamental goal of music teachers anywhere. I think music is about everybody participating and providing that access to everyone to be successful is really important. I mean, we have music makers, music listeners, everybody partakes in the same cycle of things. I can't help but think, 100 years ago, how so many people were reading illiterate still, and now if you don't read, um, your people look at you weird, like, what's up with you? Why can't you do that? Everybody does that, and I consider music the same. I feel like we're on the same path, and I think that music music learning theory and that process and the various books and teaching sequences that have come out of Gordon's research, I think it's a pathway to like hopefully letting society know that everybody can read, everybody can participate with music, and it's not just a high aptitude person's world. Certainly, I think most of the teachers and performers that end up in music are high aptitude. We've overcome things, we fill in the gaps, we go back and and it works out for us. But I, I taught this method while we were making the book. I taught my brother and my sister to play guitar just for fun, just on the side. And now they have this little skill. My brother makes music now. He sends me songs every once in a while. He's not a guitarist. He probably wouldn't even call himself a musician, but he just loves to do it. And it's going to be a part of his life the rest of his life now. And I think that's a really important goal, especially for all the classroom teachers that are out there. That's it.
I love that, and I could be biased here. I probably am because I'm a guitarist and a piano player, but I think everyone leaving high school should be able to play some chords on the guitar and on the piano and how to sing some songs. To me, it seems. Oh, and I would do a couple drum beats in there too if I had my pick, just because those are the modern instruments, and especially something like the guitar. Every culture has invented some version of we have a string and we push it down somewhere and pluck it, and it seems odd that that simple skill of being able to make a little bit of music on a guitar is not necessarily held by people leaving the school system. And even if they're not, the craziest players, I think a lot of people, if you stop random people on the street and asked, would you like to be able to play a few chords? We could really have gotten this done earlier in your life. I think a lot of people would have just said yes. And obviously there's some problems in terms of instruments being available in all the school systems and all of that. But teaching wise, I think it's doable, and it's a good goal.
Yeah. I mean, what developed for me and us over the years is that you start with all the things you think your teachers did, and you give that to your students, and then you start to ask yourself, okay, in this situation, in this lesson, what is really necessary? And then the things start to boil down, get smaller, get simpler, and you get to know the small pieces that really make the difference and the progress. And you probably know Pareto and the 80-20 principle. So everything in every lesson you do, 20% from what you do achieves 80% of the result. So I try to keep thinking that and keep improving the lessons to make it easier, make it simpler, and just go ahead and look for the core of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's also what we try to put into the teacher's guide. So you have a sequence to have an easier start than we had those years before.
Yeah.
And the core always comes back to audiation.
Yeah. For us, anyway.
Well, when we were trying to what do we name the book? What do we name?
Well, even the
guys?
website, right? The website is Audiate-Guitar. Is that correct?
Yeah, we really wanted to say this is a word. Know what it means. No, this is what this book's all about. This is what's different about it. Like Micah was saying, give everybody that gets a head start on all the things we tried to codify in the book. Many things I think people will pick up the book and go, oh, I was already doing 60% of this here and there and all over the place, and that'll be a good revalidation or validation, that they were on the right track. But it's all about just kind of putting it down. People get a head start.
Yeah, definitely for me, it's been a validation of my sanity having remained intact over the past couple of years from doing this on my own. Because I've talked to other guitar teachers, but they might not know the MLT side of it. So when I'm trying to walk through why I'm putting something in this spot of the curriculum or why I'm doing this for this, They might understand it from the physical side of the playing, or just more of a generalized musicality side. They know these chords, so we could do these songs. But there's some other things at play too. So guys, I think we covered a lot of ground. Yeah, Enrique, go ahead. Go ahead.
I don't know. I agree. We've covered a lot of things, but I just was thinking about what you said, and a lot of people misinterpret maybe music learning theory. They think it's just a rigid set of rules or whatever, but the core is really audiation, right? And that's what you're trying to develop in your students, right? And what we hope this book helps, to accomplish, just to help people, kids audiate, provide a clearer path, right? But it's not the only way to do so, right? We tested it with our students for many years, and it's applicable to a lot of different audiences. But you know, a good teacher should always look for what works for your particular student, right, or your particular group. And so it's not a rigid set of rules. It's just one pathway based on Gordon's research, right, based on all this information that's been provided to us, and so we just hope it really it's a useful resource, for all guitar teachers out there.
And I think it's a very useful resource based on the fact that it has been tested for this period of time. It's not just something you guys cooked up over the weekend and you're like, this could work. This has worked for your students. And it's not just one teacher here. There's 3 teachers using this, and for many years. And I think that that's important, and I think that's what makes me excited about it, because there's something there, and you guys are obviously very open-minded and accepting of it being adapted and utilized in a positive way by individual teachers. But I think that core that it has, it's based, MLT's been researched enough, or maybe not enough, but a lot. And then now you guys have somewhat field tested this for the decade now.
Yes.
That teacher getting into MLT can have some confidence in that. And because I think a lot of teachers that are getting into MLT are struggling. Eric and I have talked about this a lot, but it's a tall order to design a curriculum. I mean, I'm really happy that Gordon, the way MLT is phrased, these are core principles, and this is how, if you understand this, you can really go to town and do this in any way you want. But the downside of that freedom is that it takes a lot to understand what's going on and all the moving pieces of the puzzle. And then you throw on top of that actually trying to sequence this in a guitar instrumental specific curriculum. For a teacher who's just learning about MLT, that is not a realistic goal to have to start applying this in a studio. So these methods, like your guys' method for the guitar now that's coming out, and Marilyn's method for piano, and I'm not as familiar with Jump Right In, just because I'm more familiar with applying it to the piano and guitar. But it's really important for teachers to have access to these materials, because it's the difference between people teaching MLT in a guitar-oriented way, even if they're not going to follow your books forever, but they really can get their bearings for maybe a year or a couple of years while they start using some of these ideas. Because curriculum design, I think, is often thought to be a lot easier than it is, and I know a lot of new teachers, even outside of music, are constantly overwhelmed by it. It keeps them up planning, the nonstop planning.
If it makes all the new to MLT teachers, feel better, we still get confused. That's why there's 3 of us. We had to sit down and talk about it for hours at a time sometimes to figure it out. And we were well versed, and we had played 7 years and gone, why is this there, and it's a lot. I think you're exactly right. It's daunting, but it's so worth it.
Oh, I definitely think it's worth it. But I can see why there's 3 of you, and it's probably been a lot of fun having some co-authors to bounce ideas off of. Eric and I have a weekly meeting, and we're not as long as you guys, but it's building.
And also for us, it's still developing. If we would start writing the book in 5 years again, it probably would look very different. So it's still something that is alive, and not something that is, in stone and has to be done like that. It's still developing, and you can start with that, and then you see what happens.
So I like that. I mean, that just sounds very healthy and balanced.
Yeah.
And we've been writing it so long, you can go to our Audiate-Guitar.com website. That some of the students we started with when they were very young are now in their 20s, and so you have video examples of them playing as older musicians. It kind of, you can even see the result down the road of where they can go with this as a base.
Writing their own songs, right?
Yeah, for writing their songs. Love the age of YouTube. You have video recordings and examples now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I actually have I have a student who I started. He's been with me this is his 4th year, but he started. I was doing just everything MLT wise from the beginning, but over the last 6 months, he's been releasing songs off iTunes, and he just sends me a message every 1 or 2 months, and he's got songs coming out now, and it's really cool. It's really nice to see.
That's great.
Yeah. So lovely conversation, guys. It's really a lot of fun, and I want to be conscious of everyone's time on our days off here, assuming days off. But maybe the last thing I want to ask you is when can we expect is there an official launch date? Because I think when I look at the GIA site, it says in preparation. Do we know an official launch date of that people can buy the book and have it?
We actually don't know exactly.
Okay.
It takes some weeks to print all that
and
stuff.
By people, I mean me, right?
It actually needs some weeks to print. GIA told us. So we get informed once it's done. And if you are interested and want to know as soon as possible, you can check out our website. There's a contact form on the bottom of the page, and you can leave your email address, and then we will notify you once it's out there.
You can also pre-order on their website already.
We can
pre-order. Yeah, you can also pre-order. And if you have questions, problems in applying that method, you can always go to the contact form and contact us. So we're there to support and assist you and help you.
Excellent. That sounds great.
This has been really phenomenal to listen to you guys, mostly.
I know. Sorry, Eric. I mean,
no,
Eric's
perfect.
Eric's the non-guitarist here, but he's very intelligent.
I got a D in guitar in college. I had left-hand coordination and small fingers.
Maybe I should use the method with Eric. We'll just spend 10 minutes at the start of every time.
Let's test this on Eric. Come back in a year.
All right. As long as I can test you on my early childhood repertoire.
Yeah.
And my harmonic learning sequence.
Absolutely.
Yeah. There's some pretty wild stuff in Eric's book, if you guys haven't checked it out.
I just found that when I was going to listen to podcasts, and I'm really intrigued. I can't wait to read about it.
Yeah, that's what led me to approach Eric, some of the stuff he was working on.
Yeah, harmonic learning sequence is definitely a thing, and it needs to be added.
Perhaps we could have you guys back on, because I think Eric's work, in combination with the way you guys have your book work laid out, they're like destined for each other. And as Stephen was even alluding to, there's sequencing in the way the harmony is rolled out. It's not, it doesn't have to be lockstep. Like you can't play a 4-chord because we've only done 1 and 5, or you can't play a 2-chord because we've only done 1 and 5. But I don't know. But Eric really has the sequence of how to roll harmony out dialed in, so to speak. And I've thought a lot about how to do that in tandem with the guitar. So maybe in the future we'll have you guys back on and get more into this stuff, and maybe check in with how the book's doing.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, it's been wonderful to listen and talk to you guys.
Yeah.
Okay, well, all right, guys. Until next time.
Yeah.